The Paracave Podcast, proudly brought to you by major sponsor Jack's Pale Ale, exclusively available at Parramatta Eels Club, Shannon Cooney from Glenmore Park Realty, BTZD Clothing, and the official media partner of the Paracave Podcast, the Parramatta Times.
Welcome to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. And now over to your host, Troy Warner, broadcasting live from the world-famous Paracave.
And yes, hello and welcome back to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. Troy Warner here, and this is the Parramatta Eels vs Brisbane Broncos review podcast. And look, I apologise that it is a few days later. The game was played on Friday, the 10th of May, but I'm just getting around to it now. Look, we had Mother's Day yesterday, so apologies for that. Spent time with Mum a little bit. We went out, had a nice coffee and some time out, so apologies for that. And look, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. I hope you celebrated your day with your families as well in great style. So anyway, Parramatta v Brisbane, round 10 of the NRL, and it was played at Commbank Stadium in front of 17,393 fans on a wet night in Sydney. Brisbane got the win, 30 points to 14, 5 tries to 2. And look, I think it was a much improved effort from the Parramatta Eels against the Brisbane Broncos than their previous two games against the Dolphins and Manly Sea Eagles, that's for sure. Although I do believe, in my opinion anyway, that the Eels did improve against the Sea Eagles compared to the week before against the Dolphins, but they still capitulated in that second half against the Sea Eagles. But this game was a much improved effort, I thought, that's for sure. But for the Parramatta Eels, look, the Brisbane Broncos, they were always going to be tough to beat. Obviously, last year's grand finalists, and look, they've been playing some good footy. Obviously, they had their big gun halfback Adam Reynolds out of their side, Jesse Arthurs as well with a broken jaw, so a big loss for them. They had a young halfback in Josh Rogers replacing Adam Reynolds, who did a really good job for the Broncos on Friday night, and certainly his kicking game was right up there, and probably not as good as Adam Reynolds' kicking game, but he did a solid job, and coach Kevin Walters was pretty happy with his performance. Look, for the Broncos, the Billy Walters went off early with a wrist injury in the game, 12 minutes into the game, and that was after a Parramatta penalty shot that was made by Sean Russell. So the Eels got the early lead, 2 points to 0. Then Billy Walters went off for the rest of the game. So the Broncos were down to 16 players throughout this match. And look, the Brisbane Broncos' first try came to Reece Walsh, the first try in the game. It was a length of the field effort, and it was simply off a Parramatta mistake. The play got a bit... And as I said, it was off a Parramatta mistake. The play broke down. The ball went to ground. Ezra Mam, he picked it up on just after the 10-metre line, so effectively a 90-metre try, you could say, to the Brisbane Broncos. Look, Ezra Mam ran about 30, 40 and then just passed it off as smartly as he should to Reece Walsh, who ran the rest of the way and scored. Look, Bailey Simonson, he nearly caught him. He actually dived at the end there to try and maybe knock the ball out, but Reece was already across the line. And look, it was a big length of the field try. And then, look, the Broncos got the second try in the game as well, so they went out to a 10-2 lead this time through Dean Mariner, who got a double in the game, but his first try was simply because Mike Acevo, who was in this team, who I thought as a Para fan he probably shouldn't have been, he jammed in, obviously created an overlap. Reece Walsh got the ball away to Dean Mariner, who got around Sean Russell and then put a little bit of a move on Blaise Talangi at fullback there. I don't think Blaise had a chance in tackling him, unfortunately. Too much speed, and he brought the ball around to near the post and scored. Tony Staggs made the conversion. They went out to 12-2 lead 26 minutes into the game. Look, then a great effort from Blaise Talangi. He actually scored a try, and before that try was scored, he made a line break, and it was a good run that he had. Would have given him confidence. He had a great game throughout this game, Blaise. Certainly very involved there at fullback, replacing Clint Gutherson, but his try was simply off a pass from Dylan Brown and I think it was a right foot step that got him between. That he fooled Ezra Mam and got across the line, and Sean Russell converted, and that made the score 12-8. Unfortunately, the Brisbane Broncos, just before half-time, scored a try through Dean Mariner, the second of his tries, simply because Parramatta went down the short side and Dylan Brown passed to Sean Lane. Unfortunately, went to ground. It was picked up by Jordan Ricky, who just simply flicked it out the back to his speed man in Dean Mariner, who practically went, he went the length of the field, scored a try. Reece Walsh converted. This was right before half-time, so what they would call probably a coach killer, and it was 18-8 at half-time. Now, straight after half-time, an amazing try by Dylan Brown for Parramatta, which got them back into the game, made it 18 points to 14 after the conversion, but it was a great try. The kick went up. Reece Walsh dropped the ball, and then Dean Mariner ended up getting the ball, and Dylan Brown did a one-on-one strip on Dean Mariner and got the ball and scored. It just all happened so fast, but great reaction from Dylan, great thinking, reaction, and also the stripping motion, and got the ball one-on-one and got across the line. It really did get Parramatta back into the game straight after halftime, which is what they needed to get back into this game because, as I said, Brisbane were on the roll there. 52 minutes into the game, Ezra Mam scored a try. Now, this was probably maybe a little bit of inexperience from Blaise back there at fullback, but it also, we do see sometimes some of the fullbacks in the NRL defending like this, sort of just up near the line as well. But as I said, it could have also been a little bit of inexperience from Blaise as well. But you can't blame him. It's the first time he's played at fullback in the NRL. And simply Ezra Mam saw that and put a chip kick over the top. Unfortunately, Blaise slipped over when he turned around, and Ezra got the bounce, got the ball, and scored it, and it was converted by Reece Walsh, and they went out to 24 points to 14. Now, Brisbane's next try was just 3 minutes later, and it was a pretty it was a try that probably only someone like Selwyn Cobbo could score. Maybe Xavier Coates could score it as well, but it was after a short line dropout from Blaise Talangi. And look, these short dropouts, I know there's probably a plan behind them, but I just think that in this day and age, especially if you're behind in the scoreboard and you get you have to drop the ball out, I think you should just go long, and instead of trying to back your defence, kick it long. Get back to the old days where there was 40, 50 metre not field goals, dropouts, and then defend that way, because in my opinion there is less chance of a try being scored from 40 to 50 metres out. Yes, it does tire out your forwards a little bit more by running that far and making the tackle, but look, the way that these players stand these days, they are almost ready every single dropout for a short dropout. And it's not just Parramatta, it is all clubs who do them. Some are really good at them, and they get the ball back after dropping it out. Others, again, in my opinion, like Parramatta, are probably not so successful at it, and we do see tries scored. Look, this one, as I said, was probably only it was I guess you could call it a freakish try, I guess, because the kick was put in by Reece Walsh. It went through Joey Lussick's legs. One of the other Brisbane players missed it. A Parramatta player missed it in the in goal. And then it sort of bounced up for Selwyn, and it basically he put it down right before the dead ball line. So there was, centimetres before the dead ball line. So he got it down, did a forward flip, and he was up. So, look, that's how fast it happened. That when Reece kicked the ball, he certainly did kick it very hard, I thought, for a kick that was to go into the in goal, but he got the luck on it. Selwyn got the bounce, and he just put it in. So it was an amazing effort from Selwyn to get that ball down. I guess you could call it millimetres, even in between behind the dead ball line. And as I said, it was probably only someone like him or Xavier Coates or maybe even Dallin Watene-Zelezniak that could score a try like that. It sort of probably was one of those tries. There's probably about 3 tries that the Broncos scored, 2 off Parramatta mistakes and 1 off that Reece Walsh kick. So, look, it was probably not the way that Brisbane probably wanted to win, but they did capitalise on the Parramatta mistakes and get those points on the board and win the game. So from that try, not much else happened. There was a chance for Parramatta to score again late in the game to Blaze Talangi, but unfortunately it was a penalty against Parramatta for an obstruction. Kelma Tuolagi, he was the obstructing player, and unfortunately Blaze didn't get his double. So a few captain's challenges late in the game, both unsuccessful from the Broncos and the Eels, and it ended up 30 points to 14 in favour of the Broncos. And look, as I said, a much improved effort from Parramatta, but their execution just wasn't on point, and that's where Brisbane scored 2 of their tries. So, look, if we go to the stats of the game, Parramatta won most of the stats, to be honest, except for only one completion rate. So, completion rate for Parramatta was 62%. 25 out of 40 sets, Brisbane 73%, 28 out of 38 sets. So, look, completion rates are very important to win games of rugby league, and certainly having a 62% is not good enough, as we saw 2 tries scored off incomplete sets. And look, Parramatta had more possession, and they actually looked like the better team in the first half. Unfortunately, they didn't get the points on the board, but they had more possession throughout the whole game, 53% to 47% that of Brisbane. And look, Coach Kevin Walters of the Brisbane Broncos, he did say that the Parramatta offload game Brisbane had to adjust to that because their offloads were 19, Brisbane only 6, and they were finding that because of Parramatta's offload game, and that's what Parramatta is known for a bit as well, their offload game, that they had to readjust their defence, and obviously they came up trumps there. Kicking metres, Parramatta 453, Brisbane 765. Look, I think Parramatta are definitely missing Mitchell Moses in that department. We all know that he has got a big boot on him and he can kick the ball very far, and it definitely shows in those meters, kicking meters, that Parramatta are missing Mitchell Moses. The good news is potentially he could be back this week for Magic Round against the Storm. And look, after having 8 or so weeks out of the game, it'll be very hard and difficult for Mitch, I guess, to get that match fitness up. But that will be a great bonus for Parramatta if he is back. Clint Gutherson's still out as well. But it'll be great to see Mitch back. We will know that at 4 p.m. on Tuesday when the teams get named. Missed tackles, even Parramatta won that one. 37 missed tackles to Brisbane's 48. There was less penalties given by Parramatta, less ruck infringements by Parramatta. Both teams only used 7 interchanges as well. Now, I guess it's the way that the game goes that you don't use 8 interchanges when you do have that opportunity to use 8 interchanges throughout the game. And look, Junior Paolo, he had an all right game. He practically did a 47-minute stint when he came on the field after about 25-26 minutes into the game. He did 47 minutes straight. Obviously, half-time was in that break as well. He averages 45 minutes per game. Look, maybe he could have got maybe he could have done 2 stints like RCG, who played 49 minutes, and he did have the 2 stints. He played 27 in his first stint and 22 in his second. He averages about 53 minutes a game. So with that interchange still up the sleeve, but potentially maybe that could have been used throughout the game in some way. I don't know how. I thought maybe watching the game live, I thought maybe Brendan Hands would have got more time on the field and Joey Lustig less time on the field. I thought there was a time where he could have come on and potentially been the difference running around these Brisbane forwards. Look, just speaking about some of the performances of both sides, running metres for Parramatta. So Sean Lane, 13 runs, 119 metres, 29 tackles. RCG, 14 runs, 123 metres, 22 tackles. Jermaine Hopgood, 16 runs, 127 metres, 40 tackles. Dylan Brown, who has been running a lot at halfback, I guess trying to inspire his team, and obviously he is seeing some opportunities to run. He had 20 runs for 140 metres and 26 tackles. Bailey Simonson, who I thought was really good in the game as well, 17 runs, 158 metres. Look, Blaze Talangi, who I said was probably the player of the match for myself, 22 runs, 215 metres, 3 line breaks. Now, he looked pretty dangerous there at fullback. Denied a double for Parramatta, but that was only because of obstruction. There was a time there where he also, I think, knocked the ball on, but I think Sean Lane got in the way there of that pass, so maybe his vision was blocked there. But certainly a great game by Blaze at fullback, and I think he will be the fullback moving forward not only for Parramatta in future years, but also definitely in these next, say, 4 weeks while Gutho is out. And look, there was talk during the week that Blaze had put himself on the open market. I really hope that Parramatta can keep him at the club, and I would, even with Gutho back, I would probably use him on the wing and then, rotate with Gutho at fullback throughout the game as well. We've seen that previously in the past with Roger Tuivasa-Sheck and Anthony Minicello back in the day, and I'm sure that a few other clubs have done that throughout their time in the competition as well. But that one is probably the most notable, but I'm sure that Parramatta could do that when Gutho comes back, because I believe that Blaze, he is ready for first grade and constant for first grade, and he will be the long-term fullback for Parramatta if he stays there. I certainly hope that the club can keep him there. Look, Joey Lussick, 1 run for 5 metres, 35 tackles. In saying that, the Brisbane hooker Tyson Smoothie played a long period of the game. He only had 1 run for 7 metres but made 45 tackles. Obviously, a dummy half, there's probably not... obviously, they didn't see a lot of opportunity to run, so that's potentially why there was only 1 run for 5 metres for Joey. But I'm sure that there could be a few other opportunities where he could run, so I, as a fan, would like to see him run a little bit more at dummy half, especially if he thinks he's got the opportunity to do so. I think it would be different for the opposition to see him running, because I think the last couple of games he's only had one or so run, so maybe he's just there to pass and tackle. Maybe that's all his job is, although he does like to throw in a few kicks here and there as well. Look, going to the Brisbane side, Pat Carrigan, 16 runs, 139 metres, 40 tackles. Payne Haas, who is always big. We know he has he's got a big motor. He's got a lot of minutes in him. Does a lot of effort. 17 runs, 165 metres, 27 tackles. Selwyn Cobbo, 14 runs, 116 metres. Reece Walsh, 19 runs, 197 metres. Obviously, a lot of those metres from that 80-odd metre try that he scored in that first half. So, look, Brisbane, they roll on at the moment, and they get into a 6th spot on the ladder after that win on 12 points. And next week they have the Manly Sea Eagles in Magic Round, so a bit of a home game, even though they are the away side. Bit of a home game for them, and the Tommy Travojevic is out for Manly with a hamstring injury, so you would like to think that they're probably favourites up there for that game, and then they'll slowly move up the ladder as well. For Parramatta, they sit in, unfortunately, 13th position. Only 3 wins for the year, and obviously having the bye last week, so a lot of work for them to do to get up into that top 8 spot. Definitely, as a Parramatta fan, it is not where I would like to see them being. I would like to see them obviously in the top 4, definitely in the top 8, but in 13th, it is not where I would like to see them being placed, and they've got a tough assignment next week in Magic Round against the Melbourne Storm as well. We all remember 2019 and the I guess you could call it the breakout game of Ryan Pappenhausen that night, and Parramatta got caned. I think it was 64 points to 12 or something ridiculous like that. So, us Parramatta fans, we will certainly be hoping that is nothing like that against the Storm on Sunday afternoon, but a tough ask for them to get the win up there at Suncorp against the Storm, but they need it to get that confidence back and get slowly but surely up that ladder. maybe ease a little bit of pressure off Coach Brad Arthur, who is definitely under a lot of pressure at the moment with the Parramatta team losing. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens next Sunday. But as I said, a much improved effort from the Parramatta Eels. Unfortunately, they didn't get the chocolates. The Broncos got the win. And we move on to next week, Magic Round up there in Brisbane against the Melbourne Storm. So, hope you enjoyed this review of the Parramatta Eels versus Brisbane Broncos game. Now, with myself being up at Magic Round on Sunday, I will probably do a review of the Melbourne Storm and Parramatta Eels on the Monday again when I get back from Queensland, so stay tuned for that one. But throughout this week coming up, plenty of content coming up this week on the Para Cave podcast. Have the tipping podcast coming out this week as per usual. Only got 5 out of 8 this week. I did actually tip the Parramatta Eels to get a win in this game against the Broncos. I tipped 18 points to 14, but that didn't happen. 5 out of 8 last week, so the tipping podcast will be out this week. I'll also have another interview-based podcast coming out this week as well. And I am also thinking about, I think we're about 3 weeks away from when the Origin sides get picked for New South Wales and Queensland. So, look, there's always a lot of talk about Origin teams, and look, I thought, why not give my 2 cents worth, so to speak. And look, throughout the week, I won't do it all together, but throughout the week I'll do what I think will be the New South Wales side and what I think the Queensland side will be as well. So I'll do that throughout the week as well sometime as well. So stay tuned for that one. So plenty of content coming through the Para Cave podcast. Thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate it. Please spread the word to your family and friends to subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts, as well as following the podcast on social media, on Facebook and on Instagram as well. I'd really appreciate the support there as well. And as I've mentioned previously before as well, you will be able to hear the podcast on a new place as well, probably mostly for UK listeners. So I really appreciate the UK listeners listening to the podcast on rugbyleague.com, a 24-hour radio station that is just about rugby league as well. There's heaps of other podcasts out there that are on rugbyleague.com, as well as the Para Cave podcast as well. So from different clubs, and it's just basically rugby league. So check that one out as well, rugbyleague.com. You can hear the Para Cave podcast here and there as well on there. So thank you very much, rugbyleague.com, for having me on your rugby league station. I really appreciate it. So that's enough of me now. Thank you very much for listening. I will catch you next time. And as I always say, the Para Cave podcast, by the fan, for the fans. Go Para!
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Para Cave podcast. See you next time.